Hey guys, welcome to Real or Fake Thursdays, where you get to decide if a story is real or just a big pile of bubbly boop. The saga of Red Wine Girl and unhinged mother-in-law. This story has a few updates, but each is even more insane than the last, so I'm taking on this deep dive with me. The original story, The White Dress. This story is about my friend's mother-in-law and her wedding. Strap in, guys, this is a wild ride, in which I did the thing that got me banned from any of her family functions, plus a few threats of dismemberment and bodily harm. A good friend of mine from university was getting married. They'd been a couple since junior year of college, through her 2 years in the Peace Corps and her return to this continent, 6 years in total. She'd been to all manner of family functions, and always came back with a strange story about how she thinks her mother-in-law secretly hates her. But being a very quiet and sweet person, she pushed those thoughts aside. Point 1. She is vegetarian and Jewish. Husband is not. She was invited to and went to Christmas dinner and figured she would just eat sides, as well as she brought a vegetarian casserole. Mother-in-law, after knowing her for 3 years and being told by her husband a few weeks before not to forget that she doesn't eat meat, proceeded to put meat in every dish. My friend drank water and ate her casserole while mother-in-law cried the whole night to everyone that my friend was so rude for not eating her cooking. Anyway, back to the story. A few friends and I were asked to be in the wedding. My friend has a huge family, so this was not going to be a small affair. Neither of them is particularly religious, but my friend said it would be nice to be married under a hoopah. Her husband said he couldn't care less and told her to go rent one for the wedding. I was at the bridal shower when mother-in-law found out that the pretty canopy was actually a hoopah. She almost lost her shit in front of a bunch of people, but managed to compose herself and laugh angrily that if the Jews were being represented, then so would the Catholics. In my head, I heard a record screech. Guys, they aren't Catholic. So after much fighting, a lot of screaming, crying, threatening to pull money, which is funny because she contributed nothing, mother-in-law lost. The boot was firmly placed and nothing was moving it. Hoopah, yes. Catholic priest, no. Things got stupid quiet. My friend texted me the night before the wedding that she had a bad feeling. I tell her it's probably just nerves. She's getting married, and this is a big deal. Oh, how wrong I was. We all show up, get our hair and makeup done, slip into our bridesmaid dresses, and hang out waiting for the bride to be finished with her hair. She makes a comment saying she hasn't seen mother-in-law all day, and that she skipped her hair and makeup appointment. We all side-eye each other, took a few sips of wine, and hoped the eerie feeling would go away. 30 minutes later, as we're helping the bride into her dress, guess who shows up? If you guess mother-in-law, you win a cookie. Flushed from coming up the stairs, she's not a light woman, in full hair and makeup, and a white dress. Not ivory, not cream, full snow friggin' white. The dress was clearly a wedding dress. It was even from David's bridal, which she'd later shout at me. Floor-length satin with a sweetheart beaded top, a bit of a train, and off-white lace at the bottom. This dress was even tailored to her. This had been a long con that she had orchestrated. The bride burst into tears, and aunts and friends ushered mother-in-law out. We did our best to console the bride, touch up her makeup, and I made her a promise that the dress would never be seen in a photo. She looked me dead in the eye and nodded. The game was on. The venue only supplied white wine and champagne for the wedding party. But I grabbed my purse and ran into the reception area and managed to flag down an attendant by the bar. I bribed him with $20 to give me a bowl of red early. I cracked the baby open, filled a solo cup to the brim, and stalked outside. After a few swigs from the bottle for courage, I walked over to where everyone was getting ready to take photos. With one last hard stare at my friend, I got her nod of approval. I pulled out my phone, held it in front of my face like I was reading a text, and walked straight into mother-in-law. I poured the entire cup of red wine down the front of her dress and jumped back and gasped. People had to hold her back because she wanted to fight me. Eventually she switched from screaming to sobbing and sank to the ground and threw a tantrum on the floor. Everyone moved back and just let her go at it and walked away to take photos. It was surreal, as if everyone just hit their limit and noped out from around her. The 12-year-old flower girl whipped out her phone and snapped a few photos, much to our amusement. Mother-in-law went home and changed into a dark green, but too small and low-cut dress. Because of this, she missed all of the photos. The wedding was beautiful. I got death stares from everyone she told that I attacked her with wine. No fucks were given, as I drank and danced with my friends. The bride thanked me in secret, and 3 months later she took me to a spa for a day of pampering. but I'm officially that little terrorist mother-in-law, and I'll take that with pride. Absolute Easter chaos. It's been 2-ish years since the Red Wedding incident. Non-contact from the moment that wedding ended has been absolute bliss for my friends. This past weekend was my gal pal's birthday, and she decided why not have a brunch on Easter on a badass rooftop in the city. So I fired up my cooking skills and made my famous vegetarian crispy turmeric saffron Persian rice with roasted almonds and pomegranate seeds. What does this lovely brunch have to do with my sister from another Mr.'s mother-in-law? She's been non-contact for 2-ish years. I'm glad you asked, Lamas, because bitch showed up. I'm not sure whose Facebook she stalked or what person she waterboarded, but she came from out of state and showed up at the front door of their apartment building. I'll rewind just a little. My friend and I were sitting up on the roof, tossing pillows onto outdoor furniture and laying out some linen on tables. Their apartment building is only 4 stories high. They live on the top floor and are the only apartment with roof access. Because we weren't sure that people would hear the buzzer from inside the apartment, we put up a sign for people to ring the bell and give a shout out to the roof or text, and we would buzz them in. So, I'm meandering about, fluffing pillows while happily balancing my mimosa when I hear someone yelling. I figured someone came early, and my friend went to go lean over the roof edge to see who it was. She immediately reeled back and spun to look at me. "It's mother-in-law," she shouted as she ran for the apartment to stop the hubs from accidentally buzzing her in. I peeked over the roof and watched her for a bit, pacing, freaking out, pulling on the handle of the door. She hit the buzzer maybe 10 times and then looked up and saw me. She was angry. She flipped me off and went back to trying to yank on the handle and shouted something about wanting to give her baby his Christmas basket. The woman seemed unhinged. She was in fact carrying one of those drugstore giant plastic green baskets filled with crap so high it was wrapped in plastic. So I did what any sane person would do. I just parked myself up there and sipped my mimosa, watching her lose her shit and occasionally look up at me and shake her fist. My friend came back with her husband and he peeked over to see her pacing like a damn hyena in front of the door. Since people would be arriving soon, they were worried that she would force her way up with the others. I posted on the Facebook group a quick rundown of what was happening, so people knew what they were possibly walking into. Mother-in-law then had a brilliant idea. She buzzed all of the other apartments, hoping someone might let her in, while she continued to call out for her son, who at this point was hiding on the roof, drinking straight out of the bottle of champagne. Someone let the bitch in. She charged into the building, and at this point my friend's husband whipped out his phone and dialed 911. He said, and I quote, "My unstable mother and I haven't spoken in 2 years, and she's travelled across the country and showed up at my apartment screaming. She just broke into the building, and we're scared that she's a danger to us and herself." I'm pretty sure that by the time this "I have bad knees and a thyroid problem" lady made it up the stairs to the 4th floor, the cops were rolling up. She never made it inside the apartment. When the cops confronted her, she turned sickeningly sweet and begged them while she fake cried to see her baby. She tried to get the cops on her side to talk to him about going with her. The cops were having none of it and asked if she was invited here and if she knew she was trespassing. Husband went out and told the police he wanted her to leave. This is where shit hit the fan. She lunged for her son and threw the basket at the police and tried to drag husband down the stairs. When he pulled away, she decided to make a run for it. One of the cops grabbed her arm as she started down the stairs, which threw her off balance, and she took the cop tumbling down the flight of stairs with her. There were plastic toys, candy, and that crinkly cellophane crap all over the hall and down the stairs. Watching her being put into handcuffs face down in it all was fairly amusing. My friend and I sipped our mimosas from the top of the rail. Trespassing, assault of an officer, and 2 more charges are pending. It was a lovely brunch though. Red Wine Girl and the Adventures with Crazy Bitch. Anyway, so I guess you're all wondering why I called you here. When we last left off, Crazy Mother-in-Law was booked for assault on Easter Sunday after showing up from a few states away and 2 years of non-contact. She did not post bail and sat in jail until her court date a few days later, in which a sympathetic judge ignored testimony from her son and the police officer. Her charges were reduced and she was let go after having to pay a pretty hefty trespassing fee and being told she had to keep her nose clean for a year. So she then saw the error of her ways and pranced home. Yeah, fucking right. Let me set the scene. Mother's Day 2018. Sunny, warm, with a hint of coastal breeze to make the weather perfect. My friend's mother lives across the country, so they decided to join our friend group for an outdoor event with sunshine, beats, picnic food and booze. We all had a wonderful time on my side of the pond. They left to head home, and a few hours later I received a very disturbing phone call from my friend. Apparently, crazy bitch mother-in-law was stalking out their apartment. She had rented a studio a block away and just so happened to run into them when they were coming home. She was apparently upset that her son didn't call her for Mother's Day and wanted to let him know that she had officially moved here. Even though she literally owns a home in another state, she decided to rent an apartment in one of the most expensive cities in the country. My friend is disturbed and her husband is in shock. He started paperwork on a restraining order and they got a ring cam just in case. I invited them to stay at my place because apparently when my friend left for work in the morning, she saw crazy mother-in-law sitting in the cafe across the street reading the paper. Her husband has been working from home and trying to figure out alternative ways of getting out of the building. He called some other cousins, aunts and uncles and told them what's going on. They're apparently not shocked. She's been planning the sudden move for years, spoken non-stop about her son and me, but never mentioned my friend beyond making a face at her name. They never thought she'd go through with it, and said she disappeared about a week before Easter and never showed up at the family dinner. Crazy mother-in-law is stalking me. Awesome. I expect 2 Homeland Security guys at my door soon enough. My friend and her husband are coming over tomorrow to stay for who knows how long. They alerted their landlord, who has at least taken the matter seriously, and passed out flyers to the other tenants with her name and photo, saying she's been banned from the building. He's also going to keep an eye on the camera footage by the main door to make sure she doesn't slip in with any deliveries. He's a great guy. I'm going to send him some cookies. Red wine, Ramadan, and the pork chop. My friend and her husband spent quite a few days at my house across the pond, and eventually went back last Sunday. They've been leaving and going through a back exit that the landlord gave them a key to. For a little update, the restraining order paperwork is in. Her family has been called to get her ass back, and now we just wait. I appreciate all the comments here, and the people who offered sound advice. My friend and her husband followed a lot of it. So my juicy tidbit for you all actually has a lot to do with me. God, I hate/love this woman. So it's Ramadan, and I'm on my fasting game, having a lot of weird dreams about fried chicken. Yesterday, I headed over the pond to a fast-breaking party, which is when we're allowed to eat after sunset. I and a couple others headed to the party. We're down the corner from my friend's apartment. We chatted, showed memes, and waited for them to come meet us. Suddenly, I feel this tap on my shoulder. When I turn around, I'm met with a fried pork chop inches from my nose. Confusion. Then sudden recognition that crazy mother-in-law is standing there holding a pork chop at me. She then starts to gesture with the pork chop. You think you can just corrupt my son? In this country? She pointed the pork chop at me as the 2 friends I'm with start giggling behind me. And just for reference, they are 2 hijabis, the kind of slang we use to call young, fashionable women in hijab, and I am not. I'm the waist-length, curly-haired, trying to eat my head person. I pointed at the pork chop and asked why she had it, to which she responded she was waiting for me. Guys, there's totally a leak somewhere. She knew about the time of the party and was walking around trying to find us with a friggin' pork chop. My friend asked her if she was going to eat it because she's hungry, which seemed to piss her off since she yelled she knew we didn't eat pork, and at this point I'm dying, holding back my laughter. My friend and her husband came jogging up as she's lecturing my hijabi friends on their own religion. Something Trump, deported, God's wrath for non-believers. My friend's husband gets between us and is yelling at her to leave, and we all make a hasty exit down the road. I'm walking backwards, watching her flail this pork chop around and put it in her son's face. And finally, I just can't hold it back anymore, and I laugh. She points the pork chop over his shoulder at me, and warns that he's hanging out with terrorists and she can protect him, apparently with her pork chop saber. My friend's husband pulls out his phone and says he's calling the police, and like friggin' smoke, she disappears in the other direction. Glorious. Apparently, she was telling him to come with her back home, that her sister was coming to get them from our city of sin and terrorists. We sat at dinner, stuffed our faces, and told the other partygoers of the crazy mother-in-law who tried to ward us off like vampires with a pork chop cross. Rejoice, crazy mother-in-law has left the city. This update is interesting. My friend's husband called me up a few days ago to sincerely apologize for what happened for the 100th time. He told me that the very next day, she showed up at his apartment and slipped in with the postmaster. He got home from work to find her sitting on his floor in a hysterical mess, mascara running down her face, dirty, crazy hair, and smeared lipstick. He found out then that she hadn't actually rented a place here, and had instead been staying at a weekly pay motel, which she'd not paid for in some time, and was kicked out. She was broke, homeless, and firmly believed that the terrorists were after her. Without a beat, he called the police, and she was taken to lockup. He then called as many family members as he could to tell them that she'd had a psychotic break and someone needed to pick her up. Her sister showed up the next day and finally took her home. She does come back in 3 months for a hearing for not keeping her nose clean, the harassment and stalking charges, but the judge this time granted the restraining order. He's only heard snippets from family members, but she seems to have completely gone off the deep end. She's telling anyone that will listen that her trip to our city was amazing. She had such a good time. She spent so much time with her son, bonding. But the city was too big, too loud, and scary, so she just had to go home. And that one day soon her son, apparently told her, was going to come home too. No. Remember, I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.